Hello, good evening. Welcome to my Tuesday night painting demo. I got a quick start here on Instagram. There's a clip that's live there, and I have it posted to my highlights if you want to watch the beginning after this. Hopefully, I've done it right where I've actually saved it. Last week, I didn't manage to because the app wasn't quite working on my phone, but I will take that the movie that from Instagram, and I will also post it to YouTube afterwards. So if you want to also see the beginning at some point, that will be available. Um, See that there, I think it's six people here. I think just jumped a little bit. I think I get counted as one because um, I have the screen open too, so I can see your discussion, your comments as I'm painting. Speaking of which, I'm always happy if you write in where you're watching from. I always like to see that that I'm world famous or that I have viewers from all over the world. Not quite the same as world famous, but close. And just this is a photo that was taken by a photographer, Jill. She has her work over on Instagram. Her Instagram name is A Step in Her Shoes, all one word. And she takes these beautiful photos of her kids. And this is one is her daughter dressed as the beauty from Beauty and the Beast. And you can't see the whole photo here yet, but she's holding a book with this beautiful skirt on. And so I am working larger than I usually work because I want to be able to capture um, the full costume or most of the costume that's in the photo. And so what I did quickly in Instagram was I measured out where the face would be in the painting, and so I'm focused mostly on the face, which I'm going to do tonight. And actually, I got a pretty good start here to begin with. And so I'm going to try to keep using a large brush, but try to be fairly careful with the color mixing so I can start putting down the right colors in the right spot. I'm a little bit too light here, so I'm going to go ahead and adjust, get a little more white into the paint there. And I need to be a bit pinker on lighter and pinker here in this side over here. I can just add a little bit more white. I can mix right on the panel itself. If I'm too dark, I can just get pure white and mix it right into the paint there. Um, in, and that is one thing that painting alla prima is really good for is allowing the sort of the flexibility to be able to just work the paint right on the panel. Let's get a little bit more of the white here on the side of the nose. And then a little bit cleaner orange on the tip of the nose. And I can go even lighter and or lighter and orange. If I push the colors too light, the white tends to rob a little bit of color from the paint, and so I can only go so light before the white just it starts to become very um, flat or gray. And there's just a little bit of highlight on the tip of the nose. I'll put it in now, but I'll have to repaint it again pretty sure later. It's very rare that I'll put down a highlight um, and then leave it in for the whole rest of the painting. I usually go back and forth and adjust it a few times. So what I've learned over time is that I'll see color and value changes, and usually they're much more subtle than I would imagine. So would have a tendency to paint them much stronger than they actually are, and and then realize I can get the benefits of very subtle value changes to create the sense of form. It doesn't need to be always a very strong change to get it to work. And actually, a lot of times, it's more effective if you're much closer to what the resource or the photograph is doing, because it just is more convincing in a way to have those subtle changes that force your eye around. So I see Lorianne is here. Hi, everyone. So glad to join in tonight from Northern Ontario, Canada, and Bryden here too from Alberta, Canada. So I have a big Canadian cheering section here tonight. Um, Maybe not so much cheering, but uh, at least supportive. And so I'm just working. This is kind of feeling like I'm very close to what I want to get pretty much off the bat. See, the lips aren't quite where they need to be, so I'm gonna do a little bit of surgery on them. There's no there's no rush here. I can take it very slowly if I want. This is going to take a dozen hours or so to finish this painting, and so um, I am working kind of quickly for the benefit of my audience, but really probably could do a much better job if I just take a some big breaths and slow down a little bit and get maybe a little bit more control. So I'm starting to look at relative placement of things, assuming what I have down so far is fairly close. If it's not, I can just repaint it. It's um, not that hard. But if I can sort of feel the expression and feel where I want it to be, then I can just go ahead and put it in. And trying to think very dimensionally as I go, thinking about um, where the different planes of the face are pointed. Want to get a little bit pinker in that spot. I may have to clear off a spot on my palette to get those colors. Sometimes you want just a really clean mixture of two or three colors. And so in this case, in the nose, I just want white and a touch of quinacridone red. Oop. Quinacridone red's very strong, so I got a little bit too much on there, but that's looking about right. Okay. And then as I move to the other side of the nose, then it needs to be um, a pretty strong shift in value. And then there's this triangle above the bridge of the nose, a little keystone shape. That's sort of an intermediate value. Let's get a little more yellow. I what's the word? I have a tendency not to use enough yellow. It's a very strong color, so I guess I tend to avoid it, and but I really need to make sure that I'm incorporating it, especially in some of the lighter areas of the face. And then here, the hair, there's getting a little bit too much face interface, too much going a little bit too wide in that spot, so I can carve into it a little bit. Just the shape of the iris a little. Okay, great. And I have to maybe step back a little bit and look to make sure this is placed where it needs to be. Yeah, so I'm giving her just a little bit too much eye white of the eye right there in that spot. So I'm going to indicate where the top part of her eyelid is there. And then her hair drops in kind of a gold black and yellow mixture right there. And then her face is cropped a little bit tighter. Okay, so something's a little off in here. That's okay. I may have her lips over too far one way and her chin off too much the other, but that's okay. Just I can just keep on adjusting it as I go. Something a little bit more like that. And then need to have some indication that her cheek is turning away from us here. So darker orange color there. Okay, so that's starting to get it. And just continue to adjust the shapes. And this, I think I'm going to come in with a little bit of a smaller brush here and just indicate where the pupil is. Okay. And so since the pupil is set back inside of the retina a little bit, it needs to move a little bit over to the left to to um, to communicate that. And then I have a dark edge here on that other side, and then I can come in with the orange or brown, the lower part of the lid, just make it a little bit lighter so that it has a sense that light is passing into the iris. Oh, a little bit too light there. Okay, and we have Mary's here from Salisbury, Connecticut. Welcome. Okay, I have to keep on looking over at the monitor at times because I've had technical difficulty in the past where either the picture freezes or the sound starts looping, and I'll be continuing to paint for another half hour or so and not realize it, and lose the video and the audience all at once. And sometimes to get it to work again, I've had to restart the live session as a completely separate session. So hopefully I won't have any of those technical difficulties tonight, although my whole family is online streaming at the same time, so we'll see how that goes. I have an old router, and sometimes old routers don't play nicely. Okay, so I want to look at a little bit at where the base of the nose is to make sure that I'm in the right place. It does feel right, but I'm beginning to wonder about a little bit about the angles, whether this is far enough over. So get that measurement here. That's a long measurement that way. So according to my brush measurement there, I have the nose over just a little bit too far. Let me measure from the other side so can get a better idea. Just, bear with me a second, a little hard to get in here. Yeah, I think right about there. So that's looking pretty close. Let me measure the other side again. Don't know why it looked so far off from that other side. And it could be too that I'm working with such a much larger measurement that my total measurement may be a little bit off on the screen. I can take a ruler to it and see. I've had problems before. There was one time I started painting and I didn't realize it, but I had the wrong size panel. And about halfway through the painting, when the chin started showing up about 2 inches too low, um, then I realized that there was something a little bit wrong. It's a little off, but it's not off by very much. So maybe I need the ruler measurement here. So hold on. Let's clear that away. So from the edge to the nose is about 9.5 inches. So it's saying it should be right here. Let's put a little more paint down. That edge should be there. So, and let me do a better measurement from the other side. So really nail down where that is. And it could be that everything else is relatively off too. That's 7.25 inches. 7.25. Yeah. So it's saying that that should be right here. So let me measure a couple other things, make sure those things are right. Because it may be if the whole head is shifted over, I'm not going to repaint everything just so it's the right spot on the panel. 6.5 inches. Yeah, so it looks like I have everything off a little bit. So what I'm going to do is just I'm going to go with what I have. I'm not going to worry about the measurement to the edge of the panel, and just go like that. Okay. Yep. Sometimes you have to go with, if your gut tells you that it looks right, then measurements be damned. Just go with it, right? Okay. So just then I'm going to go ahead and adjust some of the colors and values as I go. So a little bit more red in these cheeks. For a while, I didn't have quinacridone red in my palette, and I was working on a painting that had a girl with a bright pink sweater, and I had only naphtha red um, and alizarin permanent, and trying to mix that with white to get a very bright pink, and I just could not get there. I was very very frustrated. And then I finally said, okay, I need something with a really high tinting strength in that hue. And so just doing a little bit of research, I use all Gamblin artist colors, artist oils, and just a lot of reading on their website, their description of their colors and their tinting strengths, and then ended up picking that up. And I've been so happy with that color choice. There's also I have quinacridone red, but there's also a quinacridone magenta, um, which is much cooler. And I decided for to get a color that's right in between the alizarin permanent and the naphtha red, that quinacridone red was the right choice for my needs. I know a lot of my artist friends said, "No, what you need is quinacridone magenta," and I was like, "Well, no, I need what I need," um, which is fine. I was happy with what I chose. Um, a similar choice was the what's it called? The phthalo emerald, which I think the phthalo green and phthalo blue are much more popular. I do have phthalo blue on my palette, but the emerald, it's such a lovely color, and it fits right in again, right where I need it to be, with that really strong tinting strength green that I can make almost any green with that and any other combinations of yellow, white, black, um, blue. I can just really push it around and get whatever color I want. And so, speaking of color, so I'm going to try to get some of the yellows in here underside of the mouth, and even going a little bit darker into the oranges here to get that the sense of the chin that protrudes out a little bit. Um, and then it's much lighter on this side, and this will help that um, illusion of volume that's there if I paint it right. And I need to get a dark enough value in the separation between the lips. So generally what I'll use is the alizarin permanent, sometimes a touch of black, or the dioxazine purple, which I've run out on my palette. So this dioxazine purple is a beautiful color. It is maybe the strongest color on my palette, and I use it very sparingly because it is so strong. You just need a little dash of it to get mixed with white or some other color to really get it to respond. And where are you, purple? I know you're in here. Yep, here it is. The dioxazine purple. I did. This is a color that I also added to my palette in the last couple years. I had a tube of it from art school that I had stashed away, and I was working on a painting that really desperately needed purple. And I pulled this out. It was a tube that must have been 14 years old and all kind of crumpled up and sad, and was able to squeeze some paint out of it, and it was perfect. It was exactly the color that I needed. Um, and right now it's the color I need to get that separation in her lips dark enough. And still I need the color saturation of the red and other parts of her lips, and that's where that naphtha red and the quinacridone red come in. I can get that nice dark rich red, and then shifting to something a little more pink up here where the light is hitting it more directly. And then this is where the magic happens. If I get little spots of white or pinkish white, and I just get those to sit right on the surface, then I can get that look, that glossy look that I want. Okay, have to be a little bit thicker with the paint there to get it to sit on top. And just a spot there. Okay. So it's starting, and I can see the shape of my lips is off a little bit. And, excuse me. So I can adjust those a little bit, but pretty much have pretty close to what I want right there. Trying to be efficient um, with my paint. I find that lately I've been spending a lot of time going back and forth, trying to get something to work, and sometimes it's just a matter of um, really focusing and trying to get it right the first time. It really does help a lot, but it requires a great degree of concentration to do that. So getting that shape of the philtrum in there, and then I have, which is typical, a little bit of white where it's catching the light in the top of the lips. And going in and carving a little bit here. And then that little bit of a smile, just a hint, it's funny, the smallest little shapes can tell you, give you so much information. And it's just that little bit of muscle that pulls up there that just tells you it's a little bit of bemusement, as well as just those slight wrinkles in the forehead that kind of um, give a little, sort of show curiosity. So those are sort of two kind of mixed ideas, which I think is what painting expressions is all about, is really that those little contradictions that come in that kind of make a unique expression. and then just having enough control to really get those to come across. Okay, so let's work on that cheek a little bit. Soften up that edge a little so it does feel like it's turning, and then bring that the darker value up towards the corner of the mouth. And again, it's really greener. So a little bit of a greenish shadow coming in here. So you'll tend to find greens, more greens and yellows around the mouth, pinks and reds across the middle of the face, and more reds and oranges, usually in the forehead. Missing a little bit of orange halftone here on the side of the temple that tells you where the forehead turns. And then there's quite ample area here that's catching the light on the side of her face, giving her face a very um, sort of a roundish overall shape, which is, you'll find more with kids will have much rounder faces generally. It's not true with really, really skinny kids, but overall, children have really round faces, not a lot of corners or edges, which makes it really hard to paint. Okay, and then I have this highlight that comes down from the top of the head and into the hairline there. Okay, so overall, I think that I'm getting a lot of the shapes of the face. Now I just really need to do a little bit of refining. Get some purples here underneath the eye, and then it shifts to like yellows and pinks on the lower part of the cheek. Okay. Try to keep pink enough here. There it is. That's the color I want. Now that color is pretty strong, and I may knock it down a little bit, but so far it seems close to what I want. And then I do have to push a little bit darker with the orange on the side of the face. Okay, getting there. So, and recently changed the black on my palette. I was using ivory black, and I might end up going back to ivory black because um, shifted over to chromatic black. That's a Gamblin mixture of phthalo green and quinacridone red as a way of creating a strong black that's also um, I'm not a purist, but there are some purists, neo-impressionists out there that don't want to use any blacks at all. And so this, in a way, is just a mixture from colors they would normally have in their palette um, to provide something that works as a black. as as the Gamblin staff says, that no blacks were what they say, no blacks were hurt in the creation of chromatic black. And let's look at her neck a little bit, try to get a little bit of the colors there. There is sort of these sort of lights that are bouncing off, just kind of giving a little bit of radiance there. Just want to indicate them lightly before I go to painting in some of her hair. Okay. And then she has coming back to pinks here. Okay, and then she's got her shoulder here, and want to keep it the color pretty clean, and then it goes off into black. Okay, so getting in some of those darks. Her hair cuts into her shoulder there, so I'm not going to put too much black there in that spot. lost my screen there a minute. Okay, so so far so good. Want to check out the cuff of their dress there. Make sure that I have it about right. So I can do, even though I'm not in the right spot on the panel that I found I'm off by a little bit, then I can still do some relative measurement to make sure that things are in the right place. So I need to come out just a little bit further with the shoulder. And then I have this really strong yellow of the dress. And sometimes the key to getting those strong, really strong light colors is painting transparently, almost like a glaze. Because if you're just doing it as a tint, getting the white in there will knock the color down quite a bit. And so just coming in with that color kind of transparently really does allow you to get a lot more vivid color. A little bit like those Renaissance artists that would do the all that glazing to get the sense of light. If you think about who, not really a Renaissance painter, George de Latour, which is he was more of a Baroque, more Baroque painter, would do all those like women or children holding candles in the dark, and the flames seem so bright. And a lot of what made those flames work is all the transparent glazes that he used, which is kind of, it's really an opposite idea of painting alla prima. But because on my palette that I have all these very strong colors with high tinting strengths and a fair amount of transparency, I can paint alla prima and still get that sense of transparency that comes with glazing. And so if I'm careful, I can get some really strong colors out of the paints. Let me see here. Okay, well, wow, I have someone here from Vietnam. That's a first for me. That's uh, Hong Hoon, if I'm pronouncing it right. And Loran says she has to go, um, but she looks forward to watching. Thank you for joining us, Loran, if you're still there. And please join us again soon. That's great. Okay, so continuing on, I have her hair coming in here, but I want to get sort of her flesh tones of her neck around it. When I say flesh tones, I know a lot of people think of pink, but flesh tones can be any color, any combination of colors. But when you have them in proximity in the right place and the right values, then you get that illusion of flesh. And you can see I have greens here, oranges and yellows over here, pinks and whites. And so there isn't any right color at all. It's just the getting the color relationships right and working. So I like the way this is coming out, and I don't want to have it overlooked. So at some point, I'm really going to slow down and just to preserve what I have there and to be very careful. I am going to want to refine her eyes more, but I think a lot of what's going on around the nose looks really good. And just pushing and pulling values carefully. Make sure that I hold on to her likeness, which I think I got pretty good without actually, without her having hair, so that's a little hard to see some of it. Just being, like I said, careful getting some of the values and shapes that I don't quite have yet, but being very careful not to disturb too much of what is already down there. trying to get the color transition right here on the tip of the nose, which is seeming to elude me a little bit. Okay, I'm going to back away from that for a little while so that I don't do too much damage. And come in here again with pure white that I can mix with the colors underneath and adjust some of those shapes a little bit. And again, there's lots of places I can come in with white and just clean it up a little bit. Especially if I can come in a little thicker in some spots to give texture that will make the forms come forward a little bit. Texture does have that ability um, to catch the eye and in effect bring forms forward. And if I get blacks or darks in the right spot, then those will recede. Okay, so starting to develop the shape of the lips a little bit so that they start to feel kind of plump. That's what I'm after. Okay, that's looking about right. And just a little bit lighter and brighter with the yellow there. A little bit too bright. Okay, I'm going to need a water break here in a second. Great. Okay. So I don't know how well you're seeing the color on your screen because of the angle of the camera. But you'll see a little bit better when I take photos and color correct a little bit with that because I feel like the color is holding up pretty well. Hi, Pasha. I have a visitor here tonight, my 10-year-old tabby cat. Hello. How are you doing? You getting a little lonely? Okay. Yeah, he just wants a little attention. Okay, so I'm just going to start to add in a little bit of hair. I'm going to clear off a good section of my palette because I don't want to get too much white in the hair, and I have a lot of white on my palette right now. And if I'm really going to get some darker darks, I have to keep white away. Can start off with quite a bit of black, throw in some yellow to get something like a nice golden green, which comes in sort of this area over here. It's not quite wet enough. Okay, I'm running out of my Gamsol, so I'm going to add a little bit more. I'm just like one long advertisement for gambling products. They um, they don't sponsor me, but maybe they should. Um, but I like their products. They fit how I paint and what I want to achieve, and I like the price and the quality, and so I highly recommend them. There's other very good paint manufacturers out there, but this one is the one that I happen to like. Um, I'm sure Winsor Newton does a very good job also, and many others. But for me, it's gambling. I like the a little bit of the ingenuity of the products they create and Their um, attention to detail, their willingness to understand the past but not be stuck in the past in terms of their color creation. Um, they're willing to dive in to figure out how to produce something that was used by artists in different time periods. And they've done lots of work for conservators, for museums to try to reproduce certain colors, but more as a research exercise and not so much to produce those colors for the public, because I think what they realize is for the public they want to produce the best modern paints that they can for modern usage. Even though if some of those colors are traditional colors, they'll come up with modern equivalents to some of those. In some cases, those traditional colors were not light fast or were toxic or um, had other issues with how the paint held up or worked. And they've worked very hard to create modern equivalents of those colors to be able to give the artist full all the flexibility that they can to be able to work in whatever style that they're working. So, kind of appreciate that. I personally have a palette that is. Hold on, let me get my screen back here. Um, just want to make sure that my looks like nope, my screen isn't frozen. I got worried there for a second. Um, I have a palette that has a very what's called a high key palette. That every color on my palette except for the white and the black are as high key color as possible, so that it gives me a maximum amount of color mixing range, and um, and their colors are ones that are excellent for creating that style of palette. And at some point, I am going to do a video that's just about my palette. And I'm digging here in my paints, and I forgot what color I was going after. Maybe it was the yellow. Okay, so I do have a tube of Hansa yellow. Here it is, right here. Hansa yellow light. It for in my mind, there's a lot of artists that swear by CAD colors, cadmium, which are lightly toxic, and but it's the colors that the Impressionists use to get very vivid colors in their paintings. But in um, with modern science and since the Impressionist time, there are synthetic colors that are stronger, brighter, higher tinting strength, um, greater durability and light fastness, and are far less expensive than cadmium colors. And so I think cadmium colors are good if you're a purist, you're trying to get exactly the same effect that a particular painter got. There are some values to cadmium colors. The way they mix, they do tend to soften and neutralize much quicker than some of the newer synthetic colors. Not something that I'm particularly interested in, but there's other artists that are, and that helps them get a much more, I guess, a more harmonious finished product if the colors tend to neutralize faster. I would prefer to have a greater color range and have the ability to go much brighter and with stronger colors, and spend a little bit more time neutralizing the colors where I need to. And so I can't recommend cadmium colors personally. They're not, at least for not the way I paint. And if you're buying the larger tubes, you could be spending $40 for a tube of paint to, or more for those CAD colors, and the same for cobalt blue, for example. You can spend a lot of money on cobalt blue, or you can buy other colors and get very close. I mean, for me, a combination of ultramarine blue and the dioxazine purple, and you can get something that is a perfect match to the um, the cobalt blue. I shouldn't say perfect match. Cobalt blue does have this um, reddish secondary color. And what I mean is it reflects the light in a way that is a different hue than the color itself. And that quality is really hard to get in a mixture of other colors. It's just an inherent property of cobalt blue. It also means when you mix cobalt blue with other colors, it tends to neutralize faster because you're already starting off with a color that has two distinct colors in it, reflecting light in different types of light in different colors. And so, if you want colors that hold up, that keep their color for longer, then you would look for colors that have higher tinting strengths. I know I talked about a lot about color tonight, but that's okay. It seems like I get a lot of questions about color, so um, so why not talk about it? Okay, hope you are all aren't falling asleep out there. I know it gets a little bit late, and and I start droning on. That doesn't help. So um, let me keep the pace moving, going after this hair bow. And again, I want to keep the color somewhat transparent so I get the richness of the color there. I already have a little bit too much black down underneath, so that's going to hurt me a little, but that's okay. I'm just going to throw a little bit of yellow in there too to brighten it up, and again, somewhat transparently to get that sort of the strength of that color. One downside of painting transparently is that you see all the hairs of the brush and the strokes. But let me see, corner. So this needs to come down a little bit further. One artist that painted a lot very transparently is Maxfield Parrish. And the way that he had these paintings with these beautiful night skies or summer skies that were these bright, bright colors. And but he painted transparently in layers, and he would separate the layers with thick layers of varnish or resin so that the colors didn't mix together. And he was able to get a very smooth, almost airbrush like um, areas, flat areas of this transparent color. And he was able to achieve that by using very small brushes and working very slowly and meticulously, putting down one little dab of paint next to another transparently until it virtually looks smooth. I think if you got right up on it, you could see where each little brushstroke was. But it was all of these brushstrokes together in succession, almost like stippling when you see a drawing or a pen and ink work that's stippled, which is these tiny little dots. And you back up and it looks perfectly like a very smooth um, value or gradation, and it's from all that small individual little points of ink. Okay, just getting that in there. Okay, so keep on moving here. So it is almost 10 o'clock here, about an hour in since I've started on YouTube, but an hour and a half altogether of of painting, maybe a little bit less. You should have seen me over on Instagram. It was a bit of a disaster because I was painting and didn't realize that I had the wrong size photo up, and then I had to search around and find it. So looked a little bit discombobulated. Okay, so getting some of these shapes of the hair. And the hair, I want to keep it simple. Don't I don't want to paint um, every strand of hair. They're English, trying to get my words out. I don't want to paint every strand of hair. I'm not that kind of painter. I want to really get the sensation of the hair without painting every hair. And so that's just a matter of squinting and seeing the colors and the values that are making up the hair and getting those in as close as I can in a very general way. So it's the getting the general colors and shapes to work in the case of the hair is what's going to make it really work, because you really want the focus to be the face, the expression, and then I guess the gesture of her holding the book. And so I'm not really that interested in making the hair be this masterpiece of photorealism. It's not what this painting is about. So I just have to keep on reminding myself every time I decide I want to keep on diving into more and more detail. Okay, need a little bit of shadow on that bow, which is the shadows on the hair. And then widen the bow at this one spot where there's the inside loop. Okay, and I can come in with some pretty strong reds right here where the bow is reflecting on itself in the shadow areas. If I just keep on working and getting enough of the values and shapes in there, then I'll start to feel the dimension of the bow. It's not quite there yet, but it will get there at some point soon. And still coming in with quite a bit of black here. That's a little bit too wet, but I'll rub it in a bit. Sorry for the heavy breathing. It's just, I don't know, just a little bit of effort getting my arm up there, I guess. Getting old. Okay, so I can see this side of the face. It's really much too light, and I'm not really getting that sense of shadow on that side. So I do have to come in and knock that back quite a bit. It's darker and redder than when I have it, so I can just go in that direction very quickly. That does help, but there's very quick transition there. Yeah, so I need that little bit of kind of bruisey red color here in her forehead. Oh, wrong color. Let's wipe that back a little bit. No, that's too light. Okay. Okay, that's a little bit better. Okay, then I have her hairline, which starts to go a little bit more orange than when I have it. And I have to find my permanent orange because I'm running out of that too. And so I really need to make her hairline quite a bit softer. It almost looks like she's wearing a wig, so I got to find ways to create a softer transition there. And then there's some strands of hair that come out that break her, um, that, that come out over her forehead. So I can just start indicating that a little bit. Okay. And want the black to be a little punchier in some spots so you really are feeling like you're moving back there in space, but then you can start to see a little glimpses of light in the hair that's behind her neck. Okay, get a little more pink in the neck there, right in here. Okay, I think kind of what I need right now is just to see a little bit more detail in the eyes, just to get some of those reflections working. Will really help me feel a little more confident about where this whole thing is. So putting in some of those darks, I got a little bit of a brush, loose brush hair stuck there. Okay, let's do that again. There we go. Have that sense that her eyes just pushed open a little bit for that curiosity, that get that shape right in here, just to be a little more careful about it. That's the widest part of her eye in that spot. And then there's some highlight that's in the white of her eye right here. And then have that touch of brown that's in the iris. Fix this bottom edge. And then a little bit of dark first before I come back in with that highlight. Okay, let's restate that pupil again, just being a little bit off to the left. Have her eyelashes come in a little bit. And now for the finale right now is that a little bit thicker, but that highlight on the just the edge of the eye right there. Okay, now I'm beginning to feel that. Great. Okay. Now it's starting to be looking like something. This is really one of the focal points in the painting, and so just having just enough detail there that it's starting to read well is really helpful. And then I can then see other things that need to be just adjusted slightly. Just pulling off a little bit of paint there and softening that transition. I think that works. And getting a little bit darker in the cheek here. Great. So now I can then start to see other things around that need just a little bit of help. It's just a little bit of dark here along the edge of the eye. And then I can come in with the brow that has some orange and blacks and greens in it. Let's see if I can get that with just one stroke. Something pretty close to that. Okay, that looks really good. Now see if I can do the same thing with the other eye. Just want to give it just enough detail and contrast and accent so that it really does start to be another focal point. Okay. Okay, this is where I can come in with my smaller brush and just really get that edge of the iris nice and sharp. A little more paint on the brush. Okay, so just going to see the top of her eyelid on one side hits close to the bottom of the other, so I need to make sure that that just is a little bit tighter here, and then comes down just a little bit lower. There, something like that. And then I need to give her a little bit more white around her iris there. I know there's a word for the whites of the eyes, and I've heard it said before. I just never can remember it. Just give her a little bit of long lashes. Okay. And then her ear that's on this side behind her hair actually goes pretty dark. Should do that in one brush stroke, right? Let's lit up the brush, get that darker red, and okay, that should do it. Give it my good old John Singer Sargent and the dark greenish black on the side of the head there. Okay, great. So her eye doesn't quite have the sparkle that I want yet, so let me see if I can get that to work. Nope. Like I said, sometimes you just really have to slow down and be a little more careful. Got the corner of the eye right here that I don't really have it in yet. It's a little bit dark gray around the edge with the red of the tear duct stuck right in the middle there. The red and with a dot of highlight right here. And let's just clean that up a little. Okay, right there I can just switch to a bigger brush because I have a bigger area to work with. Let's tighten this up a little here. Perfect. And get this eyelid a little bit higher, that spot. Okay, good. I think that looks about right. And so then I need the eyelash, the eyebrow. A little bit more red, orange. Here goes lighter as it goes out to the side. And I'm going to refine the shape of her temple here. Comes up a little bit straighter. The light up there. Then really got a lot more light on the cheek here. And then there's this purplish white. That's why I needed a little more of the dioxazine purple to be able to get that color here. It's still a little bit too dark. You see how strong that purple is? It's almost as white, and still got a fair amount of purple reading in that tint. And then it goes subtly reddish brown. I think even a little more subtle. So something very close to white here. And I can keep on going thicker and thicker in that spot there to really um, pile up the paint. That will help develop a little texture for the painting. And don't have this really sharp there, but that's okay because you do really get a sense of the feeling of the eye. And sometimes it's better to leave some things understated, which I battle with. I keep on coming in and trying to tighten stuff up, and a lot of times it really doesn't need it. But what I'm missing now is just that highlight that's there on the edge of the other iris. Just almost pure white. And you can see it's also going to need a highlight in the white of the eye. And that's like purpley white there. So just get a little bit of purple in it. There we go. I'm not getting quite the right expression with the eyes yet. They feel like they need to almost be a little bit whiter, so I can keep on pushing the whites of the eyes just a little bit further. And I do need to sharpen up this edge here, which is the fold of her upper eyelid that's pushing. There's a little bit of tension there that's pushing down a little bit towards her eye. So just lighten it up. Oh, I made that too wet, so that's going to start to run. Oh, now look what I did. No big deal. I can always paint it again. Okay, so the eye opening is just pushed a little bit more open there. Slightly. That looks good. And then, see, now it's even looser than it was before I accidentally smudged it out. But it still looks good. It looks right. Get the highlight there. Good. And I just need indications of some lashes, which I'm just some very short, thinnish lines. Great. And then that red line that's her top side of her lower lid. Perfect. Well, almost. I just made it droop a little bit too much. There we go. Okay, and then I have some eyelashes here, just lightly indicate. Great. Okay. I know I need to give her a little more cheek here. Just to, she's got sort of those appley cheeks. and just coming out a little bit stronger there, and a little bit of reflected light that comes back into that side. That's yellow and white together. Okay, that's about it. Want a highlight in the nose right here. Just, I mean, there is a highlight there, but I want just too wet. Just want it thicker that it sits right on top. That's not quite working for me yet. I got a little bit of spots of black paint in there, and so I'm going to have to try to clean that up and then still make it look loose and spontaneous. Um, so back with the bigger brush. Let's see if I can do that whole white with just one stroke or two strokes. Almost. Okay. Not so horrible. Not quite perfect yet because it's not quite reading dimensionally yet. Okay. Gonna give it a break for now. Oh, hi. So Jennifer says, thanks for another great video night. Good. I'm glad you're happy. This one seems to be coming out nicely. So I think that just comes from a lot of um, hard work in a way, kind of building up confidence to do certain things that I couldn't do before. So just slowly getting there, getting my skills up. Still not ready to quit my day job, um, but I do feel like the work is getting better. Okay, so I got some of the hair indicated, and I have her face in, and I'm going to throw some of that dark brown background around her head, which again is black with some of naphtha red and some other colors mixed into it. That's going to take some big brushes and a lot of paint, so I'm just going to get a little bit of it in here. Got my fingerprints on there too, trying to steady my hand for painting the eyes, and gonna have to clean that up a little bit too. And get the top of the head in there a little bit better. Something like that. To get a little bit more orange on my palette because I'm running low on that. Okay, so let's get just a little bit of the dress in and start to indicate the book. That would make me very happy to get the painting that far along in this hour or two. And then I can have something that I can post tonight for work in progress. Sorry I bumped the camera there for those who get a little bit of vertigo. want something kind of greenish, white greenish here for the band in her dress. Maybe a little bit stronger color. There we go. Okay. Sometimes you just gotta get that, go right for the color that you want. No beating around the bush. She's got a little bit of flesh tones coming in here, so I'm gonna try to get something, a little bit of shift in color there so that it reads okay. And then this is where the top of the book comes in. That's going to be kind of a grayish green, a lot of it. So way back when in art school, I had a class called uh, illustration rendering, and it was mostly painting with acrylics, but it was the idea that you could do a lot of things with brushes, textures, sponges, um, all kinds of ways of applying the paint to be able to mimic different kinds of surfaces and painting effects. And sometimes I think about that when I'm doing these kind of paintings. I kind of sometimes just rely on one way of putting the paint down, and then I remember, oh yeah, that I know how to make that texture or that kind of effect if I just put down the paint a little bit differently. Sometimes it works, and sometimes it just looks completely wrong. But if I think about the pages of this book, getting the little bit of streakiness of the paint um, and a little bit of texture then does really help create that idea or illusion of pages. Okay, actually went a little bit too low with the book there. It just comes in a little bit higher, something like that. Yeah, that looks about right. I can modify it later or decide that it looks good enough. Again, trying to come in pretty transparently to get the brightness of that book. Okay, and how much room do I have on the side here? Oh, wrong end of the brush. So the point of that page comes right about there. Okay, I'm going to have to wipe out some of that red because I'm never going to be able to get back to a greenish yellow if I leave that on there. Okay, that's good enough. Then just want to indicate the hand that's breaking in to the pages a little bit. Okay. Hands can be the most difficult, darndest things to paint. I think a lot of artists just avoid them whenever possible because they're that hard. Um, but there are a few tricks that you can do that really helps you. One is just really paying attention to the silhouette or the shape, and sometimes just getting that alone really does um, help get the idea of the hand very quickly. And then sometimes you don't really have to do too much after that. Depends on how much detail you want to get. But you can see fairly quickly I've gotten to the general idea of the hand. Okay, so I think we're going to go maybe about 10 more minutes, and then I'm going to call it a night here. Just have four people with me right now, which is a pretty good indication that it's getting late for some people, and um, that's fine. I think I got enough of the face and hand and book and different things working here. A pretty good demo for people to see something come together fairly quickly. There we go. And again, to get that kind of bright color, I do want to keep the paint fairly transparent. Again, I'm going to try to just kind of get the silhouette of the hand, the general shape of it, if I can. Okay, try to keep it thin here. I may just add a little bit of white to that just to smooth it out a little bit. Okay, may have gotten a little paint in my eye there. Then the the skirt is going to come up a little bit into that shape. It's just the hand overall is like a lightish pink, so let's just dump that in there. And lots of yellow here. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Okay, so I am going to stop at this point. Um, so thank you very much for coming out and watching. I guess there's three people here now. If you aren't subscribed, I encourage you to subscribe to my channel so that when I'm doing demos, you get a notification, especially if you hit the notification icon. And so thank you very much and have a good night.